Being a grown-up starts, I believe, around age 35 or 40, as far as I understand. A few years ago, Jenny said to me, she goes, when we got married, I didn't even think we were going to be married more than a year. I was like, you didn't think we were going to be married more than a year? Like,
That's an inside thought.
My favorite thing is when I look out in the audience and no one looks like me.
Does that happen a lot?
It's never happened.
I'm Rachel Martin, and this is Wildcard, the game where cards control the conversation. Each week, my guest chooses questions at random from a deck of cards. My guest this week is comedian Mike Birbiglia. It's not very often that I listen to a middle-aged man from Massachusetts who tells jokes for a living and think to myself, that dude gets me. Yes, there are big differences, but there are also a lot of parallels. Mike was raised in a really religious family, so was I. He's an extrovert married to an introvert, same. And he hosts a podcast where he asks people point-blank, really deep questions. I mean, come on, this was meant to be. His new comedy special is called The Good Life. His 2023 show, The Old Man in the Pool, was nominated for an Emmy. His one-man off-Broadway show, Sleep Walk With Me, was turned into a movie that won all kinds of awards. I am so happy to welcome Mike Birbiglia to Wildcard.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Rachel.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Here we go. Round one. You pick 1, 2, or 3.
Let's do 3.
3. What was a moment when you felt proud of yourself as a kid?
Oh my gosh. My mom always brings this up, which is when I was in high school, my parents moved to a new town, and in Massachusetts, I had no friends, literally no friends. And they moved in the summer, and so there's no school even. So it's like I have no friends, and then no school, and my parents went away for a few days for something, maybe something with my siblings or something. And so I entered a tennis tournament.
Wait, of your own accord?
Of my own accord. I entered a tennis tournament, and I trained, and I went to the local tennis court leading up to it for a few weeks, and I hit serves every morning because I'd read that about Pete Sampras, that he does that, he hits 100 serves before practice. And then I drove myself back and forth to the tournament, and I won. I won the tournament. It's so crazy. And here's what's bananas about it is that all of the parents at these tennis tournaments in New England, the parents are so serious, and all the parents were gathered around, and everyone was just like, where are your parents? And I was just like, I don't know. They're on a trip or something. And then I just drove home with this big trophy, and I still have the I mean, it's crazy.
Was anyone there for you? You didn't have friends, so your friends weren't there.
No.
Your siblings are not in this memory, so they were either with your parents or not.
I knew not a single person there.
But what a flex to be the new kid who starts school in the fall being right here.
Yeah, but I didn't even tell anybody because it's such a weird thing to say. Hey, I entered this tennis tournament. It's only when you're 46 years old that you can be I did win a tennis tournament when I was 16.
That's a good one. That's a good story. Okay. Second set of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Let's go with 1.
What's something your parents taught you to love?
Oh. That's really interesting. I have this line in The Good Life, which is kids don't know a lot, but they absorb everything. Mm-hmm. So if you're kind, they know you're kind. If you're selfish, they know you're selfish. I think with my parents, it's as I've gotten older, I've realized that my mom is so deeply kind to people in this way that I feel I've not been able to live up to it, but I've at least been able to aspire to it. It's been a certain type of North Star. Mm-hmm. And so for example, my mom, it's an absurd quality. I've never talked about this on stage. I feel she's willing to be friends with anyone who wants to be friends. And so she just has this cavalcade of friends. she'll just be like, Ellen from swim class said this. And I'm like, who's Ellen from swim class? She's like, I just met her like 3 weeks ago. Doris from stitching said that. And like, who is Doris from stitching? And like, she's an amazing friend to kind of the planet.
Yeah. My mom was like that. We used to joke. My mom would go to Marie Callender's and she would like make best friends with the woman sitting next to her eating like the Marie Callender's blueberry pie.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden she knows her entire life story. And sometimes those relationships would continue. And sometimes there were just these little ephemeral, beautiful things that happened to her. And then they evaporated.
It's got Forrest Gump energy.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, it's not full Forrest Gump, but it's in the universe of it. Like my dad would say in kind of a negative way when I was a kid, he would be like, Mary Jean, you would talk to a doorknob. You know what I mean? And it would be like at her expense. But in my mind, I was like, that's a pretty good quality.
I mean, do you try to emulate that?
I think
you
so.
You said she's like a North Star. You try to channel that?
I mean, that's my experience of, I toured The Good Life to 70 cities in America. And what I have to, like my experience of being a comedian over the course of whatever it is, 23 years of being a comedian is I feel like I've gone everywhere. I've gone to like 47 states. And I find that the thing that you discover about America, if you travel through it, is you go, people are pretty sweet and they're pretty smart and they're pretty like, it's a very, I find this to be a very compelling country. So many places where you just go, you go to Tulsa and you'll go like, oh my God, those are the coolest people I've ever met. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go to Boise, you go, those are the coolest people I've ever met. Like I just find, I think that a little bit of that is like my mom giving to me this idea of just talk to anybody.
Yeah.
What
about your dad?
My dad, I feel like is a little bit the opposite of that. He's a little more that specific thing. I think that my dad, I think that the strongest quality that he sort of passed on to me is a certain type of rigor. I think he's a very serious student. I make the joke in The Good Life where I say he was a doctor in his free time. He got his law degree, and then I go, that's how much he didn't want to be a dad. But I think that rigor that he has, and reading war novels and all that, is something that I've certainly attempted in my own small ways.
Yeah. No, it was the same for me. I mean, my dad was just a lawyer. He wasn't also a doctor. He didn't
Sure.
like, pick up his MD along the road. But he was a volunteer Presbyterian minister.
That's pretty good.
And so he did. Yeah, he like took his free time and writing out the sermons on the legal pads.
It's a perfect example of our parents being the same people.
They're the same people.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom really, we used to joke, not the doorknob, but we used to joke we could give her a stick for Christmas and she'd like go on and on about, this is the most amazing stick. And we did it to like be snarky and mean about it, but it was also, she just appreciated things. And she was an artist. She could like look at a stick and genuinely think it looked like amazing.
Sure.
Oh my God, Mom. Practice and appreciation. Next one. 1, 2, or 3.
Let's do 1.
Were you obsessed with a particular cosmic question as a kid?
Cosmic question, you mean just having to do with the cosmos, the skies,
you can interpret it however you want. You can interpret it however. Yeah. Existential?
I think for me, it was a real inflection point that occurred when I was probably 12 or 13 years old in my life, where my whole childhood I was an altar boy and I was religious and I would go to church and I had rosary beads, and everything was through the lens of that me and God were together and we're just sort of figuring this out together. And around probably 12 or 13, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not fully buying into that as an idea. And now what? Well, it's just it's a very extraordinary experience to go through in a certain way, thinking that everything is through the lens of a God, a monotheistic God, to going, oh, maybe nothing is anything, and that is I feel like that was my shift of my cosmic thinking as a child.
Did the shunning of God, did that create any grief in you as 12-year-old Mike Birbiglia, or it was just very plain, very matter of fact?
I think I felt a bit adrift. I think it was I felt matter of fact, but I also felt like I'm not sure who my friends are or if I have any friends. You know what I mean? I think it's an odd moment that a lot of people have, and some people never have, but it is that some people have, where you go, your whole life is based in a religion, which is a type of cult. I do a run on cults that in the special that I point out the pros and cons of cults, but it is a certain type of a very popular cult. And
right.
And there was a certain point where I was like, yeah, I'm not quite buying into the tenets of the cult. I believe in a lot of them, in a purely like, I think Jesus is if true, what's in the New Testament, great guy, right?
Jesus was a good guy.
Yeah, fantastic. So many great qualities. But the kind of like the church, the larger institutional things were a little more suspect in my mind.
So before we start round two, I want to pull back and talk about your special. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks.
Do you just start out with a particular story that you feel like you want to tell and that you could make an hour's worth out of material over? Or do you just like get this internal, it's time, I got to get back out there? Or I need audience?
I think part of it is based on obsession. So like what?
Oh.
Like I talk about this on my podcast, Working It Out. I have comedians on every week, and we talk about our jokes, and we kind of quote unquote work out jokes in real time. And I always, when people ask like, where do you start? I always say like obsession with something, like whatever it is. So with this one, for example, it was an obsession with like, my daughter was turning at the time 8 years old. And it was hitting that point where I was going, she has a lot of questions, and I actually don't know the answers to this level of question. Right. It was so many things where I was just going, wow, I'm going to have to explain drugs and sex and to what we're just talking about, religion and existence and all these life and death and all these things. And I started talking about that for like a year on stage. Like the first half of my tour was just me talking about how I can't explain anything to my daughter and how pathetic that is, and how inadequate I feel as a parent. And then about a year ago, my dad had a stroke. It was devastating. It was an acute stroke, and he was in the hospital for months, and then he was in rehab for months, and now he's home with care, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. And so I started talking about a year ago about how I had to explain that to my daughter. And then I started to explore this idea of like, okay, well, what has my father taught me? And then what am I teaching my daughter? And it became about that. And that's where the title, The Good Life, came from, because there was like a smoke shop in our neighborhood called The Good Life. And Una looks up and she goes, Dad, what's the good life? And I was like, oh my God, that's just like such a multi-pronged question.
So your comedy, people who love you and love your comedy know that you're a storyteller at heart, and it seems to me that you are about way more than the funny, because you will sit in a story that has a moment of sincerity and earnestness, and there is no punchline, and you just sit there. And I wonder if it took you a while to earn the confidence of your audience to do that. You know what I mean?
I think that's part of it. I think like, part of it's pressure from my collaborators. So for example, like Ira Glass from This American Life is a story consultant on this one. So like literally I sent the audio to Ira like 9 months ago, and he goes, it's really funny, but like if you were able to just level with the audience a few times, with how you really feel and not have there be a punchline. I think it would be more effective. And then I kind of found those moments over the tour in the last 9 months.
How do you know how long to sit there? Like, do you find that your audience is uncomfortable in that moment and you need to turn to a joke pretty quick after that? Or how do you measure that in your body? Like, oh, this is now long enough. Everyone's starting to get sad. I'm going to flip it.
A lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it is I guess like building up the courage to do something that has no laughs in it. And this is probably, we're referencing probably like maybe 3 or 4 moments during the show. And sometimes literally like I'll be on tour and there is like a sense of like, or there's an audible kind of like gasp at those moments. And then when that happens, it's like you go, oh yeah, I'm really, there's something here that people, to your point earlier, you're just like, oh, how is this, how am I thinking that this middle-aged guy's story is my story? And it's like, that's the goal of the whole thing. The goal of the whole thing is that literally everyone in the audience, age 13 to 113, feels like, oh yeah, this is my story. And that's my favorite thing. My favorite thing is when I look out in the audience and no one looks like me. You know what I mean? Like that's so satisfying.
Does that happen a lot?
It's never happened. I'm waiting. This is a hypothetical scenario. It's like 3,000 people who look exactly like me. 3,000 Mike Birbiglia clones in the audience, and a handful of Ira glasses for good measure.
Handsome. You are handsome.
You look great. Everybody's looking good tonight. No exceptions. No, but you do have, because I've been on This American Life over the years, so I do get my share of like Ira Glass clones in the audience. It's hilarious.
No, it's a whole look. I know, it's a whole look. He started it all.
He started it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for all that. Congratulations again on the special. We're back. You feel like doing more?
Yeah, let's do
more.
more.
Your answer has to be yes. Okay, round 2.
Number 2.
Number 2 is what you want.
Yep.
Okay. What failure do you still think about?
Because I'll give you an example of one that's really vulnerable, and I feel like I will write about someday, but I haven't yet, which is like, when I was a kid, probably around 9th grade, I was very much bullied, and I got punched a lot. I was in an all-boys Catholic school. It was really, really tough for me. Not for everybody. For me, it was very tough, and then I switched schools, and then there was cases where people would bully. Like I remember another kid, I won't say his name, where kids were bullying that kid, holding him down, slapping him, whatever. It was kind of a hazing kind of energy. And I feel like I was a part of that. And I feel like that is not something that my adult self would do, but I think that my 15-year-old self would, and I think that that's a hard lesson. I feel like I think one never fully lives that down.
That's such an interesting answer, actually, because I feel like when this question has come up with other people, I think most people lean into like the professional world, and this didn't work out for me, and this didn't work. And it's very interesting that you went to like what you would consider, tell me if I'm wrong, but what you're characterizing as like a moral shortcoming when you were younger. I
think that's
felt
accurate.
Like a moral failure that now you would have handled that differently.
I'd like to think so, yeah. And it's the thing that recurs in my mind. And even it's the thing that like when I'm that's why I was pausing to even share it, because I'm in my mind doing the calculation of the listeners. How much will they judge me? How much can they take?
Yeah.
How much is in the comments section of people saying, well, you're a jerk because blah, blah, blah. And I'm not there to say, no, I'm telling you.
But also you were 15.
No,
it's not
I
like
know.
This happened like
no, I know.
40th birthday party.
No, it's true. But I will say, like, I think that it actually ties into my comedy quite a bit, because I do think the most interesting comedy is when people are willing to talk about things they've done wrong. But I think that in this moment where there is sometimes a little bit of holier than thou energy culturally that people feel very comfortable expressing. And I think I'm able in my shows to say, like, it's almost become a catchphrase in my show. Like, I'll say, like, if the audience gasps, I'll be like, I know, I'm in the future also. You know what I mean? Like, I'll call out, like, that I'm aware that I'm the person who's wrong in this story. But when the audience isn't there in real time and it's just the internet, it just sort of flies out there and it's kind of for anyone else's consumption and however people wish to take it apart.
3 more cards, 1, 2, or 3.
Let's try 3.
Has ambition ever led you astray?
When hasn't it? No, it's wild. Like the ambition thing is certainly ever present in my life. I think because of my dad, like we were talking about earlier. I think because my dad was like an overachiever, and I think I brought parts of that, observed that, and imitated it to some degree. I think it worked to my benefit in the last few years. I think it worked both to my benefit and less, and the opposite in my 20s. Like in my 20s when I started doing comedy, I just thought I have to succeed immediately. Like there was no runway for success. It was just, my parents don't want me to be a comedian. So I have to be a comedian immediately, or else they're just going to disown me. So I think that
seems intense.
Yeah, and so I think when I talk to my peers from my 20s, I do think I was a little off-putting in relation to my own ambition, just being unbridled. I think everyone who works, who does whatever job they do at a very high level, does have, in some ways, an uncomfortable degree of ambition. But I think that what you have to learn to do as a grown-up, being a grown-up starts, I believe, around age 35 or 40, as far as I understand.
So you're just breaking into it right now. You're just getting your groove.
Yeah. Is understanding how ambition does not work against being kind.
So when you were in your 20s and you said that some people could find you off-putting because of your ambition, were you less kind, or how did that manifest?
I honestly think the way it manifested was, things that are simple as like forgetting people's names, forgetting to call people back, forgetting to, email people back, or, being transactional, being like asking for things but never offering things, and I think that when I was in my 20s, it's like, that's what even my closest friends from college, who I'm still, like, my improv group from college is still like some of my closest friends. I think if I were to really put their feet to the fire on, like, what's the most critical thing you'd say about me in my 20s, they'd say, yeah, that. Like, you were just like, you were there when you needed us, and you weren't there when we needed you.
That's tough.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my way in that now. I'm trying to earn people's trust back, and all that.
Yeah. Are you good at carving out time for friendships?
No, I think it's probably my weakest vector of the pie that is one's time. Yeah, I think friendship I find probably the most challenging. But a bunch of my friends are comedians and comedy writers. Like, 2 of my closest friends are Nick Kroll and John Mulaney. And Nick Kroll I cast in my college improv group, the Georgetown Players. And then a year after I graduated, he cast John Mulaney. And so the 3 of us have been friends for years and years.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, last one in this round. 1, 2, or 3.
All right, let's do 1.
What does age teach you about love?
Oh. What does age teach you about love? I think that I think what it teaches you is that it's a longer it's it's a longer term time frame than you think it is possibly when you're younger. Like that when you're younger, when you're in your teens and 20s, you think you're so driven by like your passion of like, I'm in love with this person. We're going to see the world together. We're going to, et cetera. And I think as you get older, you have a sense of like, oh no, there's a longer game to this, that like, it's that like in some ways, like loving someone for 5 or 10 or 20 or 30 years is meaningful. And it's hard and challenging, but that the payoff of it's meaningful.
You've been married for a long time, right?
Yeah, 17 years in July.
Yeah,
we got married at
that's
City Hall almost 17 years ago.
How old were you? May I ask?
I think I was 30. Yeah, I was 30.
Yeah. So when you were 30, did you have the same expectation of what a long love is?
I don't think either of us did. I mean, what's funny is like a few years ago, Jenny said to me, she goes, when we got married, I didn't even think we were going to be married more than a year. I was like, you didn't think we were going to be married more than a year? Like, that's not, I thought we were getting married for life. Like, how come we weren't on the same page about that?
That's an inside thought.
Exactly. That's an inside thought.
Round 3, beliefs.
All right.
1, 2, or 3?
Let's try 3.
3. Have you made peace with mortality?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. My last special, The Old Man in the Pool, very much goes headlong into this, where I basically was like, can I make a show that's all about death?
Yeah.
And have it be funny and have us walk away feeling good, better than when we came in. And I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm working through, to use your language, my making peace with ideas through the comedy specials. So I feel like in that one, I feel like I did make peace with mortality.
How did that help you come to terms with dying, either yours or your loved ones? Like, was there anything particular about it? Is it just the thinking of it over many, many months as you put it together?
I think it's spending so much time thinking about the people who I've lost in my life, who've died in my life, and thinking about how much life I've been lucky enough to live
already.
Mm-hmm. And just this idea of like, this is a line that was too on the nose for The Old Man in the Pool, but it's like a day is a week, is a month, is a year, is 10 years, is 80 years. It's like we're all alive for about a day. And I feel like that's the kind of line that sometimes in my shows and does on the cutting room floor, but I feel the experience of it. And I feel like that's where I landed with that show.
Yeah. There's something you wrote, forgive me, it was in an article. Maybe it was in one of your specials about your dad and maybe an uncle having a heart attack at the same age? 50,
yeah, it was my father. I think it's my dad had a heart attack at 56 and his dad had a heart attack at 56.
Yeah.
And so
that is marked for you.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm setting aside that whole year when I turned 56 and I get an Airbnb by the hospital.
But that stuck with me because my mom died when she was 60, and I think that's far too young. But it does sear itself in your mind. And I'm 51 now, and I'm not 60 yet, but it is in my head, that age. And it does make you think, this is just icing. Like every day I get to live, it's just
I think Bill Burr had a joke recently.
Extra.
I think Bill Burr had a joke recently in one of his specials where he's just like, guys just die in their 50s. You know, he's like, that's the age where people just start dying, you know, and he's not wrong. Like it's that there is an amount of people who just keel over in their 50s, and and that's a long time. I mean, my friend Mitch Hedberg, one of the great comedians of all time, he died when he was 37 years old, but he lived a lot of life.
Right.
I remember when Robin Williams died, who I was lucky enough to meet a handful of times. And I thought, this is devastating, but also this guy has lived more life in this amount of time. He's lived 300 years of life in this space of time.
Yeah.
So is it a celebration or is it a tragedy? I think it veers more towards celebration.
Yeah. Last one. 1, 2, or 3.
3.
What truth guides your life more than any other?
I think the truth that probably guides my life is that trying is more significant than results. Like that, whenever I see people in their life or in their job or whatever it is, and they're trying in earnest to do their best, I always have respect for that. And I have it for myself. I have self-respect when I am trying. I feel like I get down on myself most when I'm not trying. And I think that is definitely, to circle back to one of the earlier questions, that's from my parents, for sure. Is my parents would always point out, it doesn't matter if you win, it matters if you tried.
That's so interesting, though, because you also pointed to them when talking about your own ideas of ambition and how ambition could really take hold and at times lead you astray. And ambition is very, focused on outcome. That's what ambition is.
Yeah, that's right.
Achieving.
That's right.
It's focused on outcome, not the trying. So it's interesting that now maybe it's just the stage of your life and your career that you can look and say, no, it's the trying. It's the trying that matters.
Yeah, I think with this particular special, for the first time, I'm not talking about something that happened in my past. I'm talking about something that is happening in my present. It's like I'm dealing with raising my daughter now. I'm dealing with taking care of my dad now. And I'm talking about, and it's completely unresolved, and no one knows which way it'll go. As opposed to, I sleepwalked through a second-story window 20 years ago, and now, I sleep in a sleeping bag and I take medication, and I've dealt with it to some degree. And with this one, it was really a leap of faith. And there's an expression people say sometimes, which is like, you can work and work and work and work, and you can get something so that it's 85 or 90% of what it could be. And at a certain point, you just go, well, the last 10%, that's God, or that's something else. That's outside of your grasp. And I think that's true. And I think with this particular special, it was more true of anything I've ever done, which is fun, which is ironic because it's thematically about God.
It all ties in.
Yeah, it comes together.
We end the show the same way every time, and we are indeed at the end with a trip in our memory time machine. In the memory time machine, you pick one moment to revisit from your past. It is not a moment you would change anything about. It's just a moment you would linger in a little longer. What moment do you choose?
I feel like when my daughter was probably about 5, in Rhode Island, my brother Joe, my sister Gina live in Rhode Island with their kids. And we brought Una to Rhode Island, and we took her out, and they were all like bodyboarding in the ocean in Rhode Island. And it was such a euphoric feeling to witness Una my daughter at, age 5, like catching a wave, that feeling of catching a wave, and it's propelling you, and you're going probably faster than you've ever gone on anything. And just to witness her doing this with her cousins, and it was just so beautiful. And every now and then I witness this at different ages that she experiences, but that one really sticks out as just like so beautiful.
Mike Birbiglia, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was wonderful.
Mike's new comedy special is called The Good Life. It is on Netflix. You can go to Netflix right now and click the Remind Me button, and it will remind you when it is dropping.